morning, guys. Thank you. My name is Griffith Swidler, and I am the School Partnerships Manager here at Commonwealth Club World Affairs. We're very excited to have you here with us today, and we have a really great day set up for you. Some of you might already be familiar with our organization, and some of you might not be. For those of you who aren't, Commonwealth Club World Affairs is the oldest and largest nonpartisan public affairs forum in the United States. Every year we host hundreds of programs right here in this building and at venues around California. If you come on any given day, you might hear from a scientist, an artist, an elected official, a community leader, a professor, a writer, a journalist. Our speakers come to talk about topics ranging from politics to education, climate change to social justice, entertainment, culture, and more. We have lots of programs and projects for schools and for teachers and for students, and we offer students and educators low-cost memberships and free tickets to most of our public programs. So that's our organization. Creating Citizens, which is the name you'll see on the flyers and the posters here today, that's our organization's Civics Education Initiative. And yes, while we are an education initiative and we work with students, we also work with adults. Creating Citizens has three foundational values: civility, mutual respect, and informed action. Our projects build on these three things, and we work to engage in, with both young people and adults, meaningful civil dialogue about important contemporary issues. Our goal is to help all of us become active, informed participants in our democracy. But we don't do this on our own. We're extremely grateful to the Correct Foundation for their generous support of Creating Citizens and for their commitment to improving the quality of civics education in California and beyond. We're excited to get this program started, but before we do, we are recording this program in the back, so you guys can check your phones, your watches, or anything else that make noise, and put those on silent. That'd be great. This is our plan for the day. We'll start with a conversation between three fantastic speakers who I'll introduce in a moment, and they'll speak together on stage till about 11. And then if at any point you need to use the restroom, exit through the doors in the back, they're in the hallway. Please go out and come back in quietly. During the last 15 to 20 minutes of their time on stage, you, the audience, will have a chance to ask questions. We're gonna set up a microphone right here in this aisle, and you'll be able to line up and ask questions. After the program on stage, we're gonna flip this room. You guys are gonna help me out for 5 minutes. We're gonna move all the chairs to the side. I'll give you guys directions on that. Then we're gonna break for an early lunch, and then we're gonna come back and we'll give you instructions for the afternoon. We're gonna end around 2 o'clock. If you're wondering who these other people in the auditorium are, we actually have 3 schools here today. So we have Berkeley High, George Washington High School from San Francisco, and Marin Academy up in San Rafael. Woo-woo. We have some fantastic civics-focused speakers here with us today, and we're deeply grateful to them for the time that they're donating to be here. So first we have Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis. She's the 50th Lieutenant Governor of California and the first woman elected to the office. From 2010 to 2013, Kounalakis served as U.S. Ambassador to the Republic of Hungary in Central Europe. Prior to her service as ambassador, Kounalakis spent 18 years as an executive at one of California's most respected housing development firms, AKT Development, and throughout her career, she served on numerous boards and commissions, including California's First Five Commission, the San Francisco War Memorial, the San Francisco Port Commission, and the Association of American Ambassadors. Joining the Lieutenant Governor on stage is Hercules City Council member Alexander Walker-Griffin. Walker-Griffin was elected to the City Council of Hercules in 2020, while he was completing his undergraduate degree from St. Mary's College. In 2023, he served a 1-year term as mayor. With this, he became one of the youngest mayors in the country. In the fall of 2024, Walker-Griffin completed his master's from Johns Hopkins, and he also serves as a Cal Guard Army officer. Moderating today's program and guiding the conversation is our very own Ava Escobedo. Ava is an undergraduate at UC Berkeley who will be graduating this spring with a bachelor's degree in history. Ava is passionate about the political relevance of history and hopes that by understanding history from new perspectives, young people will be more civically engaged and better equipped members of our society. Ava is also an intern here. Okay, enough of me. Please join me in welcoming our speakers to the stage.
Hi, everyone.
Great. You take the hot seat.
Thank you, Griffith, and thank you so much to both of you for being here today. I'm really excited to learn more about you and your journeys into public service. So to start out, we're gonna ask some questions just to learn more about how you got to where you are and what you do in your roles. So we're going to start with the Lieutenant Governor. Lieutenant Governor, you started out working in the private sector, but then transitioned to serving as President Obama's ambassador to Hungary in 2009. So what made you want to jump into politics, and how had previous life experiences inspired you to make this switch?
Well, Ava, first of all, thank you so much for moderating this discussion and for all of the students who are here. I'm Eleni Kounalakis, Lieutenant Governor of California, and the Commonwealth Club is just such a fabulous organization. It's so great that you all are here getting an early start on being engaged in public policy and government and world affairs. So you have sort of early career, late career up here. I think that we're going to be able to cover a lot of really good ground. So as you mentioned, I was in business. I went to Berkeley for my MBA. I worked in a family business building master planned communities for 18 years. I was then tapped by President Obama to serve as a United States ambassador. I was posted in Hungary, and then came back and expected that I would stay in foreign policy and national security, and Donald Trump won the first time. And as you might remember, that you guys were pretty young, women across the country marched and then started running for office. And I was one of those women. I'd never run for office before, though I'd been very involved in civic life and politics and government as a businesswoman. But when he won, after what I had seen and experienced in Hungary with Viktor Orban, deconstructing Hungarian democracy, I stood up. I often say it's the least thought through thing I've ever done in my professional life. I'd never run for office before. I ran for lieutenant governor and won, and then was just reelected 2 years ago. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I know it's public service and having an elected position is something that maybe a lot of young people are thinking about, and it might not always be linear to get there, so thank you so much for that response. Now we're going to move on to Alex. Alex, you became mayor of your hometown at 25 and served on the National City Council at 23. And if I'm not mistaken, you're also a member of the California National Guard. So you jumped into a life of public service right away. So where does that come from? And is there something about your family or how you were raised, or did you have some early experiences when you were younger that encouraged you to jump into office so young?
Yeah, thank you again for the question. It's so great to be up here with two phenomenal leaders and all of you. Fun fact, my mom actually went to Berkeley High, so really excited to see them in the crowd. But, excuse me, so I got into politics pretty early on. I got into politics at the age of 10. At the time, that was President Obama's 2008 campaign, and so just started liking it really early on. It was my grandmother and my mom who emphasized knowing who are your leaders. And I took that to heart. 13 years old, I started working on my first campaign. And it was really, unfortunately, when my dad passed away when I was 18, that's when I was like, I don't want anyone to experience what I went through ever again. We came home to an eviction notice the same day that he passed away, and that just changed the trajectory of my life. Fast forward, I went to community college, and that's where everything springboarded. Joined student government, like I was telling you backstage, out of complete chance. My teacher, she told me I should join. I thought it was a ridiculous idea. Fast forward, it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. And I actually won my race for city council at 23. But it's actually not the first office that I held. At 19, Governor Brown appointed me to the California Community Colleges Board of Governors. It took 6 months and 20 interviews to get appointed by the governor to represent, at the time, 2.3 million students and oversee the nation's largest system of higher education. Actually, I believe you're a member of it right now.
Indeed, I am.
And that kind of set the springboard up for me today. It was traveling up and down the state. One day I'm in Eureka, the next day I'm at the Mexico border, hearing about the issues, seeing them on the ground, talking to people. And I just felt that was inspiring. And I always believed that you can't make change unless you're at the table. And professionally, I'm a legislative advocate, so lobbyist, for a labor union. So every single day I go up to Sacramento and I get to live out my values of pushing and advocating for people that I care about.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, as someone who's also young, I think that that's really inspiring. And I think it's a good reminder that you're never too young to start. So if you're inspired to do it, then do it.
Absolutely.
But now I kind of want to hear about some of the tasks that you come across in your roles and your daily experiences. So, Lieutenant Governor, what does your day-to-day look like?
So very often people don't really know what the lieutenant governor does. That's fair. The California Constitution, is written a long time ago, at a time when if the governor left the state, a state this big, you can imagine the governor was very, very far away and you didn't have modern communication tools. So it is still in the California Constitution that when the governor is out of state, that the lieutenant governor assumes the role. Now, in modern times, that has certainly been modified. So Governor Newsom can do a lot of things if he's traveling, but we have protocols in place so that in the case of some smaller things, like last week when he was gone, I issued the proclamation for Ronald Reagan Day, was the anniversary of his birthday last week. But then in more serious things, at one point the governor was traveling and there was a bill that needed to get signed. It was up against a deadline, and I became the first woman in California history to sign a bill into law. And I did that. I've done that a couple of times over the last few years. But the day-to-day is a little bit different. This office, I ran independent of the governor. I have certain roles that come along with it. Those roles are largely within higher education. I sit on all three boards of public higher ed in the state, the UC, the CSU, and the community college system. A lot of work there to make higher education more accessible, more affordable, easier to navigate for California students, for all students. And then I also do a lot of work on the environment. So I ran on a platform of phasing out offshore drilling off the coast of California. If you go down to Southern California, you see how much more prevalent it is there. And since I've been elected, there is in fact less offshore drilling today than there was when I was first elected. And I chair the State Lands Commission, which has a role in that, as well as serving on the Coastal Commission and the Ocean Protection Council. So that's a little bit of a sense, but I think overall what we try to do in our office is we think of ourselves as a strike force. We use the bully pulpit and the profile of the office to be able to pick individual issues from time to time that we then go out and advocate around. As the first woman in this office, certainly issues of equity, parity for women in government, in the private sector, that's something that we talk about quite a bit. I have a council I put together for our office. It's the very first trans council anywhere in the country because, not expecting that this would become such a hot button issue, just being out in the community and realizing that there are things that we need to understand in our governance structure that is significantly impacting this group of people. And, maybe before I hand it over, I'll just say this. There's a lot of talk right now about democracy and what democracy is. Fundamentally, democracy is self-government. We govern ourselves through a system of elected representatives and through spreading power throughout a system. It's not always the most efficient form of government, but it is tried and true over 2,500 years, the best form of government if you're an everyday person. That assumption is being challenged right now, I think. But one thing that one sort of lesson of democracy or what democracy means is that in any democracy, the majority rules, but minority rights are protected. And it's not about ignoring the majority. It's about, in a system like this, everyone deserves to be protected under the law. And so that's certainly a value that I hold and one that continues to be very important in California.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you for all the incredible work that you're doing. I know even in the green room seeing you go about your day to day was really interesting to watch. So thank you for that. Now we'll move on to Alex. So what does your day look like as a city council member in Hercules? And Yeah.
So it is, I like to call it one of the craziest customer service jobs that ever existed because, I go to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm bench pressing. True story. It was the day after I got elected. I'm bench pressing. This guy comes over to me and he's like, hey, do you know what's happening in my city? So 5 o'clock in the morning, I could be talking to someone while I'm bench pressing. I bench press 275. Just want to note that. And then after that, it's nothing but running around the city. So when I got elected, right, there's all the base covers, right, that you do it. Let me meet with my finance department. Let me meet with the city manager, is essentially the CEO of the city. I like to mix it up. So I started reaching out to a lot of our external partners. And so for me, a lot of their times it's talking with the governor's office. It's talking to our congressman's office. When I became the mayor, we're working on this really cool project in Hercules, the Hercules Hub, ferry, train, and bus service in our city. Somehow the White House heard about it, and I'm at the gym. I obviously spend a lot of time there. And President Biden reaches out like, hey, do you want to come to the White House to talk about this? I thought it was an absolute scam until I actually got to the gate of the White House and handed over my driver's license to the Secret Service. And they were like, okay, come this way, Mr. Mayor. Didn't say who I was, just said, hey, I was told to come here. So every day is kind of different. I mean, one day, this is not even 2 weeks ago, this lady reaches out and she's like, hey, can you get this tree cut down? I don't know whose jurisdiction it falls into. I literally bring a tape measure. This is why city council is the closest form of government, to see whether if it was in the county, the cities, or one of our special parks, the East Bay Regional Parks District. And then every day is completely different. You might be
Based on the size of the tree, is that what you're saying?
Based on the size of the tree, location, and technically it is technically in all 3 jurisdictions. So now we're trying to figure out who's gonna cut down this tree.
Oh boy.
It's so crazy. But a lot of my time is also too, dealing with constituents, because when people need to get in touch with our member of Congress, say Congressman Garamendi or Senator Arreguín, they come to me first. So I'll reach out to these offices and guide them on that. So really no 2 days is ever the same. One day I'm out and then I get an email, can you come to this man's 95th birthday party? And I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know what I'm gonna say at some person I've never met's 95th birthday party, but sure. So I went, gave him a little proclamation on behalf of the city and just things like that, right? I go back to the elementary school and the high school that I went to in Hercules all the time to talk to the students and talk to the principal, make sure things are good there. But truly no 2 days are ever the same. Again, it's the coolest job ever to represent the city you grew up in.
Amazing. Yeah, it seems like for both of you all that you have your day-to-day tasks. You're also someone that people around you look up to and that they look to you when they need advice on something or they need to know information about something. So it's a constant on the clock job.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, thank you for both of your responses. And now that the audience has learned a little bit more about you, I'd like to move on to some more specific questions about your experiences. So Alex, you were mayor of Hercules, you were mayor of Hercules, California. And Hercules, as I understand it, rotates the mayorship around the 5 city council members. So you were a city council member before you became mayor.
Yep.
How do you think your time on the city council helped you when you became mayor, and what skills did you gain during your time as council member that helped you transition?
Yeah, I really would say the skills that I learned back when I was 19 on the California Community College Board of Governors really kind of paved the way, because I started learning a lot about California and where a lot of the hidden monies and hidden dollars were, because pretty much every single week I would go up to the Capitol. I would leave class, have my suit in my car, go to the bathroom, change, and go talk to some random legislator about the community college issues that we were facing. And so when I got elected to the city council back when I was 23, I got off the Board of Governors when I was 21, I would take that same knowledge with me. So the Board of Governors really prepared me to it, but the city council side prepared me to be politically tactical. And I think that that's something that a lot of people tend to miss. I used to run March for Our Lives California, and I did all their public policy. So, there's a lot of laws out there that were because of me and my friends at the age of 20. But it taught me to be politically tactical, like working with Republicans, working with moderate Democrats who I may not see eye to eye with, and understanding that everyone has a story, and at the end of the day, everyone's a person too. And I tell you right now, at 19 years old, when I first got on the Board of Governors, I wouldn't have had that same mindset. But fast forward 2 years of cultivating being on the city council and becoming a mayor, it really showed me what leadership looks like and what political leadership really means. And that's about bringing people together. It's not about isolating people. Sure, we're all gonna eventually, have some issue where we're all gonna stick to our guns. Like, for example, I introduced an equal pay ordinance. It's the strongest in the nation. It's the first one of its kind. We're the only city in the country that requires anyone who wants to do business in Hercules to sign our agreement. If you don't sign our agreement, you can't do business in the city. Let me tell you, that was not popular, and it was really, some of my colleagues were concerned that it was going to deter businesses from coming to the city. And I said, okay, I hear you on that, but if you're willingly, knowingly wanting to violate someone's rights, I don't want you to do business in our city to begin with. And eventually I got my colleagues to come around to it, and it was a 5-0 vote. We got it through. But that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the years of building up that sort of leadership and understanding, like, how can I get this person on my side while at the same time holding on to my values?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I think that like having those experiences is really important and can teach you a lot about how to navigate certain situations later in life. So thank you for that. And Lieutenant Governor, as we mentioned earlier, you were the United States Ambassador to Hungary. And I think most people would view the roles as Lieutenant Governor and an ambassador as pretty different. But what do you think your time as ambassador, like how did it help you become Lieutenant Governor, and what skills were transferable?
So are some of you interested in foreign service and in international affairs as well? I think that's part of this, right? So I grew up here in California. My father was an immigrant from Greece after the Second World War. And he came to California when he was 15. He didn't speak English, didn't have any money, and he was by himself. He had an uncle who sponsored him as under a refugee program that was in place at the time. And he worked as a farm worker. He learned English. He went to school. And then he made his way to Sacramento, where he enrolled at Sacramento State University and worked his way through supporting himself as a waiter in the governor's mansion. And so this was sort of the story of our family. And there are a lot of things that, determined my trajectory as a result of my father's story. But one of them was that the United States is an incredible country, that it threw open its doors to refugees like my father, that he was able to compete, that he was able to rise up from, in any other country at that time, was a low station, that an opportunity to go into the middle class, and in his case, he built a business, the one I mentioned. All of that is because of how special our country is. And so working as a United States ambassador, there are a lot of components to it, but first and foremost, you're representing the United States. And even then, during the Obama administration, we had some challenges. We had gone into Iraq after Afghanistan, and that was very unpopular with our allies. But when Obama was elected, there was this sort of turning the page and a fresh start. So it was a very exciting time and positive time to represent the United States. And I think it deepened my appreciation for the role that we play in the world. And though I was raised, as you can tell, I think, very patriotic, it deepened my my sense of duty toward my country. And I had a lot of time that I spent. I went to Afghanistan twice. I had a military attaché, a defense attaché from the Department of Defense, and we had members of National Guards from across the country, mostly Ohio, which had a lot of Hungarian Americans who were training in Hungary. We were doing exercises together, and then they were deploying together. So spending so much time with the U.S. military was another thing experience that I feel very grateful for. But then, of course, Viktor Orban, who nobody had ever heard of, really. Even when I came home and I wrote a book about my experiences there, it was very difficult to get published because they said, well, it's a small country. Okay, this happened there, but is it really relevant? And in fact, now many more people know about him and the way that he had this sort of velvet transition from a young but aspiring democratic system with a free market economy to the economic crisis of 2008, to then him coming in with the mantra of "I alone can fix it," and the people voting for him in such large numbers that he had enormous amount of power upon which he consolidated more and more and more power. And so when Trump came along 8 years ago, to me, this was not Democrat-Republican politics. I believe in a two-party system. This was a question of what does democracy look like in the 21st century? And I felt it was important, because of my expertise, to run for public office, to bring that experience as a leader now in California, which is, by the way, the largest majority-minority democracy in the history of the world, meaning a majority-minority society or entity is one where no ethnic group has more than 50%. United States, it's on its way, but California reached that a long time ago. So we have a story to tell. We are the largest majority-minority democracy in the world, and we are the 5th largest economy in the world if we were a country. So all of this very much has tied together and informed my work. And I will tell you, I did not know that we would be in this situation again. But to me, it's more important than ever to bring that experience to the table and to attempt to do it in a way that is calm and able to sort out the difference between the things that might be healthy reform for our systems and things that feel a lot like a wrecking ball to institutions which are extremely important in ensuring that the people have a say in our own governance.
Thank you for that. Your sense of duty after seeing what was happening in another country is really inspiring. And I think it brings me to the next question, which is related to your time in Hungary. Because for those of you who don't know, Viktor Orbán became the Prime Minister of Hungary in 2010 when you became ambassador, and he immediately weakened the Hungarian judicial system, corruption increased, and curbed the freedom of the press. And you saw all of this up close. So the question that we have for you is, what was that like? And right now, what are the signs as Americans that we should look out for to make sure it doesn't happen? And if it does, what should we do?
Well, I want to get back to Alex. So I think I kind of set the table to answer that question. But what I would say is the most important thing is that there are sort of two, in a situation like this in Hungary and here, these sort of two ways that people are sort of addressing it. One, well, maybe everything is going to be okay. Maybe some of the things like USAID needed reform. Maybe the way they're doing it isn't right, but maybe this will be good because maybe there is too much bureaucracy and democracy isn't being efficient enough. If there are 3 jurisdictions to determine a tree, that honestly, Alex, that's a problem for a lot of people, right? And it shouldn't take an elected official coming out to make a call. Like, we do have to make sure, and Hillary Clinton said this when she came to Hungary, that democracy delivers, that democracy works. It's really important. And then the other side is this kind of, we got to fight them on every way, we got to be the resistance again. Neither of those alone, in my opinion, is going to do the job. What I think we have to do is a combination. We need to raise our voices on the very specific things that are going to impact everyday people to show why they don't want to cede their power to Elon Musk or the Trump family. And on the other side, recognize that there might be some things. It can't be that if we assert that every single thing they're doing is bad, that's not going to help us in our argument, because there are going to be things that they do that are going to be popular that people like. Viktor Orbán reduced the cost of gas, rewrote people's mortgages, and immediately people felt it in their pocketbooks. And 14 years later, he's still in power.
Thank you for that. I know a lot of us are grappling with questions over autocracy and what to do about the things that we're seeing occur in our country right now. So I think your insights are really helpful. So now we're going to move on to some more questions that are kind of related to the audience. So my question for you is, you were the youngest mayor of Hercules ever and one of the youngest mayors in the country. How do you think your age worked in your favor, and how do you think it worked against you? And did you have any experiences where you were dismissed by colleagues, or did they appreciate your perspective as a young person?
Yeah, so fun fact, I'm California's first Generation Z mayor. I look really old, but I'm actually 27. I was born in 97. But you know what? It was really mixed, especially, showing up behind the dais. A lot of my colleagues are twice, 3 times my age in some case, so a lot of people weren't really receptive of someone who's as old as their grandson or maybe their kid themselves. So for me, I wanted to make sure that I proved myself through my work ethic, and a lot of my stuff prior to the city council I already did. So when I was on the community college board, we made community college tuition free. So I had that talking point. I was one of the key negotiators to make that happen. In 2018, I mobilized to the campfire with my old unit, and that was the state's, at the time, most deadliest and destructive fire. So I had been on the front lines of when my state needed me, and so I brought that perspective to it. Now, in terms of age, the beauty of it was the relatability, right? Because Hercules is the city that I've lived in since I was 5 years old, so I know where everything happens, right? And so, you can't shortchange me. I know where people are going around, and I'm still a skateboarder to this day, so I go to the skate park, so I know what happens there, so people can reach out. But where I would say it became an issue was people didn't know any of my accomplishments. All they would see is my face, and I didn't realize that initially until someone made that direct comment. It's like, people don't know anything that you've done. They just see how old you are. Here I am walking to some of these meetings and rooms, excuse me, with some other colleagues, and they're just extremely dismissive. It honestly felt like high school when I first got on the city council, because I come, have my little meal after we just had our meeting, and then this group of flock over there, this group of flock over there, and I'm like, oh my God, where do I sit? So I'm like, you know what? Let me put pedal to the metal and actually get to work and start working with my colleagues. And that's when I noticed that kind of tide sort of to change. And for a lot of young electeds, they do encounter this problem where they show up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, as my grandma used to say. My family's from Mississippi. And they get behind the dais, and then they suddenly realize that the work actually has to begin. And like how I mentioned earlier today, you have to be tactical with the work that you do. That was my whole mindset going into it, was because I want to win. I want to put on for my city. But at the same time, too, I realized that at the time I was 23 years old, I want other young people to come behind me. And so everything that I do is always going to be watched. It's always going to be judged. And I want to make sure the stuff that I do today sets a tone, so that when the next 23-year-old or maybe 18-year-old takes office, that it's not out of the norm to just see somebody who's young and in office. Because when we're young, we do get it done. I mean, again, running March for Our Lives California, we were passing laws and we were 20 years old, getting the governor to sign off on them. And, we were still an undergrad. I mean, I won my election when I was still at St. Mary's College of California. Go Gales. So anything is possible, but just remember to always be tactical and always be smart about what you do. And remember that you're setting a precedence for folks that come down after you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that recently, especially, we've kind of seen a movement of young people starting to take more positions of leadership. And I think it's really inspiring to see people like that, because it inspires other young people to do the same. So now I want to ask both of you a question, kind of to, I guess, help people who are concerned about our current political system. So when it comes to public service and civic engagement, are there things that you wish you knew when you were in high school? So let's start with you, Alex.
Oh, man. It's never too early to get involved. Really what kind of sparked everything for me was Hercules is a Bayside city. If y'all never been to Hercules, it's literally just 10 minutes north of Berkeley. Most of y'all drove through it, never stopped. But yeah, when I was 17 years old, I was walking along the waterfront, and I just thought it was super dirty. And so I go to this council meeting, right? And I'm like, hey, I'll clean this up for free, just whatever. I need the permits, whatever. Just give me it and I'll do it for free. All 5 of my colleagues, all 5 of the council at the time told me no. And fast forward, 2 of those colleagues would end up becoming my colleagues that I would serve with on the city council. And so I didn't like that answer of them telling me no. So I went over to the refinery and a couple other organizations and organized that cleanup for myself. So it was a great experience. So never feel like you're too young to do anything. Truly, truly, truly. I mean, on the board of governors at 19 years old, representing 2.3 million people and making community college tuition free, telling someone with a PhD that they're wrong, the power is in your voice, and also the power is in your perspective and your life story. I think we often misnomer our life stories all the time, and sometimes, especially as an elected official, those are the most powerful things that people can relate to you, is their story about how this issue is going to impact them. So if you're talking to maybe your city council member, your state senator, whoever, always remember to share that story. And there's 1,001 ways to get involved. Maybe it's an organization like a nonprofit, like with March for Our Lives that I was with, or maybe you want to join your planning commission, or maybe you want to join, some of these other boards that your city has. Reach out to your council members, reach out to your senator, whoever, to see what opportunities are out there. But definitely get involved, because no perspective is a misperspective.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, get involved. What about you, Lieutenant Governor? What do you wish you knew in high school?
When I was in high school, the world was a very different place. And I look at all of you, and the access to information and the maturity level as a result of the access to information that you have, it's just light years ahead of what was going on in the world when I was young. And rather than telling you what it was like for me, because it really is ancient history, I just don't even know that it's relevant. I think the way I'd rather, if it's all right, Ava, answer the question is what I think it's really important for you guys to know from my perspective. And I say this as a mom because I have two boys who are 22 and 23. I spend a lot of time on college campuses right now. Mental health has emerged as something that people talk about. People didn't even talk about it. It was the source of shame. You had to show that you were fine all the time, right? But the fact that young people have taken away the what is it called? The taboo of stigma, thank you, of mental health challenges, I think that's so incredibly important. And so with my kids, as I see them looking at the challenges around them and the pressures around them, I think it's really important to get a good night's sleep, not have your device next to you that wakes you up. So much is better when you sleep well. I think that healthy eating is part of that as well. Physical exercise for your well-being is so important. And I think when my kids were in high school, it was that's what I noticed. Sleep all night, eat healthy food, and exercise, just even a little bit of walking, just a little bit of that. I think that gives you so much strength and grounding to be able to handle what's coming at you through your social media feed or, in your networks at school. I think that's just extremely helpful. And then beyond that, I've noticed in some ways, your generation can often be better than my generation in putting your phones aside and knowing the difference between the virtual world and the real world. And I think paying attention to that is really important. And I think that in many ways, you all have a lot to teach us. And so if there's one thing that I would ask you to think about, something that I think is important for you to know, it's really what we're talking about up here. Service, not feeling that you shouldn't have a seat at the table because of your age. Absolutely true. And I've known Alex outside of this forum, and he is extremely well respected and sets a very, very good example and brings perspective that others appreciate and wouldn't otherwise have. But I also think that the degree to which you can tune in to what it is about the American system of government that has gotten us as far as it has gotten us today, and help efforts to support, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, right? We're in California. it's different than the rest of the country. We have to pay attention to where the rest of the country is and why they think the way they do and why the way that they voted the way that they did. Very different from how we voted here. We have to watch that. And in our attempts to be inclusive of those who might have made up part of the majority of the electorate that just voted for Donald Trump, and to think, okay, if we are concerned that this consolidation of power is ultimately going to be not good for everybody, how do we get everybody out there to vote and to encourage them to vote and to say your voice really does matter? And how do we parse out the things of our democracy that we can pretty much all agree upon are important for the next generation?
Thank you so much for that. And just to touch on one of the points you made, I think being on a college campus right now, I've seen that a lot of students' mental health has been deteriorating because they're so stressed out about what's happening right now. So I think it's really important that you said that we need to make sure to take care of our well-being first in order to go forward and be a part of any change that we want to occur. So thank you for that. And I have one more question for Alex, but before that, I wanted to let you guys know that next we're gonna switch over to student questions for our speakers. So there's a microphone right there in the aisle. And if you have a question for one or both of the speakers, then you can start lining up at that microphone now. So my last question for you, Alex, is that we often hear that while national elections are important, you can make the biggest difference in your community, and specifically at the local level. So do you think that's true? And if yes, can you give us some examples of the types of things that we can do at the local level that can have an impact on our communities?
Let me tell you, the power, so one of the beauties of being on the city council is you can do things pretty rapidly. I mean, the first 2 years of being on my council, we got a lot of stuff done. I started our police chief advisory board, passed our equal pay ordinance. I started a rent relief program. Small business relief program, because, I got elected during the pandemic. So we did this all within 6 months. So the change is really just there. As long as you can get the number of votes that you need, the power is right there. And again, with that equal pay ordinance, one of the reasons why I'm so happy about it is because, one, we're the first one in the country to do that, so I think that's pretty cool. But also, two, it set a good precedence, right, for good governance and making sure that businesses, when they come into our city, they want to make sure that we make sure that they treat people correctly. But again, that's that power of local government. That's that power to control your day-to-day life. Yes, our friends in the state and the federal level obviously have a huge say in how our day-to-days operate. But at the same time, too, on the local level, we can pass a lot of stuff that really do significantly impact your day. And you may not even think about it. We could pass a bond that may increase your sales tax. And you may think, wow, this is 5 cents more than it was just a couple of days ago. But that's only if you're paying attention, that you'll know these kind of things. Again, I think one of the biggest things that makes city council so special are a lot of times it's just regular people that decided they had a niche issue, a really, really niche issue that they wanted to get involved with. For me, it was that waterfront cleanup, and my colleagues told me no, and I was like, I don't like this answer, so now I'm going to go do it, and now I'm going to go get involved. So it's little things like that, and because you don't have to deal with some of the institutional challenges, say that like Congress has to deal with, or navigating the federal government, you can do these things in a couple months, in a couple weeks, really, if you have the votes to it and the momentum behind it, and it sets a tone for years to come. And a lot of other colleagues around the state will listen. So people think that we're isolated in our little bubbles being on our city councils. No, it's the exact opposite. Just because I'm in Hercules, that doesn't mean I don't know the mayor of LA. That doesn't mean I don't know the mayor of Columbus, Ohio. So we're always constantly passing information back and forth to each other about best practices. And so, how I see it is policy should be set to where you make a difference today, so the person that comes tomorrow doesn't know why things are the way they are. You're always trying to make someone's life better. And if you're benefiting it directly from the policy that you're doing, one, that's probably illegal. But two, you're trying to make sure that the people who come after you have a better life than what you had and the experiences that you had. When I was a student body president at Contra Costa College, which is the community college that I went to prior to St. Mary's, we started a free breakfast, school supplies, and bus pass program. That came out of a random whim, talking to our advisor one day, just saying, hey, we have $25,000. What can we do with this? We put it towards the program that I mentioned. We thought it was going to last one semester. I left Contra Costa College in 2018, and it's still going on to this day. So it doesn't matter whether it's an elected body or if it's something like student government or even something local with a nonprofit. There's 1,001 ways to be creative and use your voice and use your power and what you have to make the lives better for someone else.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think it's really important to get involved at the local level. And if any of you guys are looking for ways to get involved, I know you can always sit in on a city council meeting, so that's a good way to get started. So thank you both so much for answering my questions. And now we're going to move on to some student questions. So if you want to ask your first question, please.
Is it? Oh, I got a question. So, like,
What's your name?
Oh, my name is Emmanuel. I go to George Washington High School. I really like. This is a question for Alex. Like, I really like what you said about like you can't make change unless you're at the table, and like once you get in that position of being at the table, like how do you position yourself to show your work ethic in like an uncomfortable situation where you're working with people like maybe twice your age or like you said like maybe 3 times your age and. Like for me, I've been trying to like just sit back and listen first, and like before I can say something. But like I feel like there's a lot of things I want to say, but I just feel a little scared to say it.
Yeah, so this goes back to my, first off, all of y'all find a mentor and hold on to him. For me, that mentor is Darius Anderson. I met him when I was 19 years old, and when I first got elected, I would talk to him all the time about it. But you're already doing it, is you're listening. Because a lot of people, when they come from, with well-intentioned, right? They come from a place where they're fired up and motivated, but they don't want to listen to get the vibe check of the room. I know it sounds very cheesy and cliche, but the most powerful person in the room sometimes is the person who didn't say a word. And you're just listening to everything because you're listening to what people are saying. You're listening to what their thoughts are, and you're learning what their thought processes are going to be. And ultimately, you'll have an idea of where this person might land on an issue. So definitely sit down and actually talk to people, but most importantly, listen. And then, you know, depending on, say, like if your thing that you care about is transportation, get involved in that, but listen to the stakeholders too. But don't be afraid to chime in your perspective. Like, never forget that. But at the same time, make sure that you give that balance of always pushing forward, but at the same time being mindful of the realities that's going to be, because sometimes there might be financial constraints, right? And you might see something as a really big priority, but the money just may not be there. So be mindful of what you're going to do for that. But at the same time, like I said, be tactical. And what does that mean? Always think 10 steps forward about what the next step is going to be. And then how, if option A happens, great. But if option or scenario B happens, then you can adjust fire from there, as we would say in the military.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Lieutenant Governor?
No, that was great answer, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I worked with Darius Anderson at the California Democratic Party in 1992 when we were both in our 20s.
Love that guy.
So very often you start to find people who are in this kind of work together. So it's fun when it all comes full circle.
Oh, indeed, indeed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can clap.
Hello, I'm Gibson. I'm from George Washington High School as well. And my question just for the two of you, like in the next 5 years, what do you see yourselves doing? What are you looking for in the future? And then like for us people our age, like what can we do to make the most difference, like as we turn into adults? Because I'm still 17.
Well, I guess I'm not a particularly good politician because I actually haven't mentioned that I'm running for governor of California yet, but it didn't seem necessarily on topic. No, I started a campaign for governor 2 years ago. In this state, it takes a long time to build up the support that you need in a state that's so large. So that's what I'm going to be doing, but I'm also going to be doing everything I can every day to make California function as well as possible, to be that example of why democracy and a liberal democracy delivers for people. And I'm going to be doing everything I can to protect our people against federal laws, which we know are going to hurt people because they already have. You know, we're a subnational government. We can't do everything we want, but that is a top priority for me and for my colleagues up in Sacramento in the legislature and, of course, the governor. And we're going to do everything we can to hold the Trump administration accountable and show our fellow Americans that this is not, that ceding power and allowing someone or some group of people to consolidate power and suck it out of the system into their own hands is not healthy. And I would ask over the next few years that, number one, you get sleep, you eat well, and you exercise and stay off your phone sometimes. But that as young people, getting the word out that people need to vote and be vigilant and follow along is incredibly important.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
For me, next 5 years, personal note, I would like to start a family. Like, I'll tell you right now, dating as a politician, like, it's so weird. It's so, you go on Hinge and then someone will be like, hey, I saw you on the news. And I'm like, yeah, that was me. But outside of that, it's, for me, I want to continue seeing young people get elected. So just as young people do, 2020 was a big year for us. Like 30 of us got elected. 2022, more of us got elected. 2024, more of us got elected. So what did we do back in 2020? We started a group chat. So we started this group chat basically like being best practices for one another, but actually at the same time supporting young elected. So like I mentioned with March for Our Lives, their founder, David Hogg, who's still a really good friend of mine, we started a PAC, Leaders We Deserve, to get young people elected into office. So I'll be definitely more hands on the ground trying to make sure that we get more young people around this country elected into office because we desperately need it. But at the same time, not just young people, but good people who actually care about pushing the ball forward and making sure that the issues that we're dealing right now with the orange man in DC and his friend who drives around a Tesla, who will not be named, never get back into office ever again. And so for what y'all can do, because like you just said, you're 17, wherever you go to college, first thing you do, priority 1, make sure you're registered to vote. Priority 2, look up who represents you, city council, state, county, federal, and make sure that you are in touch with that office and be that annoying bug if they ever start messing up, for lack of a better term. But in terms of being involved, like I mentioned, like if you do decide to go off into college, make sure that you get involved with student government or a club that you're really passionate about. Maybe if you go off into the trades, make sure that you get involved with their political side. So that way when, say labor unions donate to candidates who are running for office, that they choose the right candidate. Again, if there's 1,001 ways to get involved, but those are just some start right there. I mean, the simple fact of y'all being right here, right now, is a testament to you. So all of you give yourselves a round of applause for what you're doing. I'll tell you right now, growing up as a skater boy, 15 years old, as much as I like politics, I wouldn't have thought about being here. So you're already on the right path. And then please, if y'all ever need anything, hit me up on Instagram at Alexander Walker-Griffin, DM me, and I'm happy to help you all out and love to see where your journeys unfold.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jace from George Washington High School, and I had a question for you, Mr. Griffith, about, since you mentioned when you got into politics, you were doing beach cleanup and stuff like that.
Yep.
With the current environmental issues going on down in the Palisades with the fires and whatnot, my family's personally been affected, and I wanted to know how I can personally make a difference and impact the cleanup there.
Ooh, that is a tough one. First off, I hope your family's doing well. It's really, really tough. So my heart goes out, and from everyone in my whole city, we definitely do. There's been a lot of nonprofits that have been on the ground helping out too, but also I would recommend reaching out to the city council members out there, county board of supervisors out there, seeing what direct organizations have been doing that work, and reach out to them and see what efforts you can be a part of. Sometimes it's monetary, sometimes it's time, sometimes it's as simple as sending somebody a blanket. But I definitely think that's a better question for our Lieutenant Governor, who's been boots on the ground doing amazing work out there.
Thanks, Alex. Altadena or Palisades?
Palisades.
Yeah, it's incomprehensible until you see it for yourself. I'd be happy to talk to you after just to compare notes, but Alex is right. There are a lot of entities that are involved. You have the Army Corps of Engineers that's responsible for debris removal. You have the EPA that's helping people get hotel rooms and figure out what their interim solution is. Some people have insurance, some people don't, some people are underinsured. We also have Cal Recycle that's part of the effort to remove debris. I am so sorry. I am so sorry that this happened to your family and your community, and the magnitude of it. We're talking between the two sites somewhere in and around 15,000 homes that are gone. Rebuilding is going to take a long time, and what I have seen is the county, which has jurisdiction in Altadena, is maybe going to be able to move a little bit faster. The terrain is more even and the lots are smaller. Palisades, where every home is a custom home, and people have very specific ideas of what they want. And where the infrastructure is going to have significant upgrades and improvements, it's going to be difficult and take a long time. And I will say this, there is enormous will and commitment. When I was down there last Friday, the FEMA administrator told me that the day before he had transferred $5 billion over toward the cleanup, which is already under contract and underway. So the resources are there, the will is there for a speedy process and speedy rebuilding, but there are going to be moments where the will is going to be tested and where we're going to have transparent conversations about some of the differences of opinion or some of the roadblocks to make sure that we can move past them. But if you want to grab me after, I'd love to hear your story.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sasha. I am a senior at Marin Academy. And I'm wondering, with many of us probably going off to colleges next year, what is the best way to get politically involved, both on campus or off campus? I know for me, I'm going to a fairly liberal institution in a very red state. So what is the best way to go about getting involved in a very politically different climate?
Which state?
Louisiana.
Well, have fun out there. No, but Louisiana's dope. I know. I really do mean that. Like, have fun and definitely enjoy your experience out there. And congratulations. I cannot harp on student government enough. Like, being able to sit down with the president of the college or the chancellor and be like, "Nah, this is what we're doing," is a really cool feeling. But also, it's really cool to see that impact again. Like, me and my friends, we literally started a free breakfast, school supplies, and bus pass program out of that. Also, too, I mean, if it's kind of obvious, I'm a Democrat, so get involved with the Young Dems, especially because they also do a lot of their work externally. So you get to know some of the legislative delegation, either in the state or the federal side. So if you ever want to see like opportunities like to work in DC or maybe in the state, that's a really good way too. And a lot of times too, you know, it might be your fellow college campus students that are involved in this. But at the same time, you're also building connections externally. So you'll make friends elsewhere and you'll be around like-minded people who share the same values with you. And it's crazy enough, my friends that once upon a time when we were all college students together doing what college students do, I now see working in different legislative offices in Sacramento. So not only is it a great way to build your network, but it's at the same time, it's a great way to actually get stuff done. So Young Dems, if you're a Democrat or whatever your political party is, and student government, can't harp enough about.
Next phase, Central Committee for your county. If you're in, if you continue to be registered to vote in California, if you're up in Marin, very, very good training ground. You can get involved with the campaigns of people who run for Central Committee. You can run yourself. And from there, you can also get involved with the California Democratic Party, the state party in our state, your home state, or the state party in Louisiana. They're always looking for volunteers and for people to help to support the grassroots organizations that feed up, frankly, into higher office as the pipeline.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Derek. I'm a student at George Washington High School. And Mr. Griffin, I have a question for you regarding our past mayor, London Breed. And as another young mayor in California, what are your own opinions on how she handled things? Because I know me and the peers around me, many of them were unhappy about like the rising police budgets and whatnot.
You know, Mayor Breed, I think San Francisco's a tough city. It is a tough city. Overall, it's a Democratic city, but you have two fractions, at least from my perspective, on the opposite side of the water. hashing it out. So I think she really had a tough job in her hands. I mean, she kind of came into it in a really crazy time. Ed Lee passing away, you had the situation with the Board of Supervisors. And so coming into office, I mean, maybe if she would have ran for mayor initially early on out the gate, it might have been a little bit of an easier adjustment. But I think with the cards that she was dealt with, I think she handled the city pretty well. Again, in her situation, you're not just dealing with the mayor's office, but you're also dealing with the Board of Supervisors who, you could think of it as like the president and Congress, right? If you got two sides not always in alignment, it's going to make things difficult. So I think she did pretty well with the cards that she was dealt with, like anything, right? There's things that I wish I could have done better in my first term in office that had I known I would have done better. So I think overall she did well. Kudos to her. I don't know what she's up to these days. Haven't seen her in a while. But given the cards that she was dealt with, I think that she did a great job.
Thank you.
I might just, when London came into office, the city was a very different city than post-COVID. And I think it was indisputable that her leadership during COVID was exceptional. It was the first city to issue a stay-at-home order. And that was her recognition that what we were headed into was very bad, and she listened to the health advisors in the county. There is no question in my mind that there are people in our community who are alive today because of those decisions. But this is a story of what politics is about. The environment around you is always changing, and one day what you are advocating for and the policies that you're trying to get done are the right ones, and the next day things can change. And you have to get ready and be ready. And I'll say one thing about London, she's very, very tough. And she could understand that as well. But if you make a decision to go into elected office, you have to know that people now with social media are holding you to a very high standard on the issue, the way they feel about it, every single day. And you can stand up and give a talk like this or a talk in front of a group and say 5 things that you're going to work on. And someone can take an issue with one part of one thing and say, I'm not voting for her. I'll vote for somebody I don't even know rather than vote for someone who, out of all the things they just said, there's one thing that I don't like. And so it has put all of us into a very challenging situation, and we're going to have to figure out as a society what is good enough, what is close enough, what is, how do you not be necessarily a single issue voter, because you can undermine a whole bunch of things you take for granted if you are so determined that you will only vote based on one or two issues. And I want to say one other thing. Nancy Pelosi always says this to me and to others. I've heard her say, as a Congress member, a lot of people don't know who their Congress member is. Yeah. A lot of people don't know who the governor is, don't know who certainly the lieutenant governor, the treasurer, the controller, secretary of state. People know who the president is, and people know who their mayor is.
Yeah.
And so a lot gets piled on top of the mayor. It makes it a very difficult job.
I want to add one more part to that, because kudos to what you said, Madam Lieutenant Governor. So I used to work with children with disabilities for a number of years, and so that perspective always stays with me. One of my very first budget requests, actually it was my very first one, was to have a swing set installed for children with disabilities at our biggest park. I'm thinking like, okay, great, this is helping out a cause that's not there, because who's often not at the parks? It's children with disabilities. Let me tell you, I got lit up on Facebook about that. It was a waste of money, it was a waste of time, it was a waste of resources. So definitely, you're never gonna have 100% of the people behind you.
I understand. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And we are closing in on our time with our speakers, so this is going to be our last question. So go ahead.
I'm also from Wash. I was just curious about your opinion, but what do you think is the most significant challenge society is facing today?
Loaded question.
I think it's clear the most significant challenge in the United States, in my opinion, is how information is being distorted through social media. you cannot have a democracy if people are not working off roughly the same fact sheet. And the way that people, you don't even know who they are throwing things into your feed very deliberately to get you to think a particular way. This has disrupted the kinds of networks that we can see and feel, and it has created an environment where people don't know what to believe or who to believe. It makes people, just by definition, feel afraid. When people are afraid, they lose their sense of generosity and compassion and kindness for others because they're worried about their own safety. This is a basic part of human nature that I think is also being manipulated out there. We have to figure out how we can continue to embrace all of the benefits of technology and the reality that technology is not going away, and at the same time deal with what we know are massive distortions in the way that we receive our information and what it causes us to believe or to do. That is the challenge to me of the moment, and frankly, it's why I'm here, because this is a room full of the next leaders of this country, in whatever way that you choose, at whatever level you choose, and you have grown up with this technology. So I think that you're going to play a very, very important role of helping us make sense of all this, get it under control, and make technology truly work for us and not against us.
Thank you.
I definitely would echo that the age of misinformation that we're in is really toxic and it's really scary. I mean, I see it all the time. Like, one of the first things I do in the morning is check social media for the different community Facebook groups, different things around the community to know what people are saying. And it's really unfortunate to see how many people would just believe truly anything. Now, our generation, because we kind of grew up with a lot of the technology, we can point out when something's an AI image. But for some folks, like maybe our grandparents or stuff, they can't always detect that really easily. And it's scary because then you have people falling into these traps. Just the other day, I saw an ad on Google for a company that would, quote unquote, help you speed up getting your social security card. I was like, this cannot be real. But I can only imagine how many people who are looking to get a social security card, especially right now with all the stuff going around with ICE and undocumented folks, the vulnerabilities that are placed, how much that could seem like a safe haven right out the gate. But then they fall into it. Next thing you know, they're paying who knows how much amount of money for something that'll, in the short term and the long term, really harm them. So I think it's the age of misinformation that we're in, I think, is what's the most scary to me. And, again, you have folks in Washington right now occupying the White House for the next 4 years that will gladly put out misinformation and call it in the name of free speech. But when we know that leaders like ourselves, this is only harming people. It's not doing anyone good when you can just have access to anything, and you have these companies that will go out targeting people like our grandparents and vulnerable communities that may not know some of the technology that's coming out right now that's only there to harm them and get money out of them. So that I would say the biggest issue.
Are you surprised by our answer?
Kind of.
What would you have thought we would think?
I was thinking, I thought that the greatest or the most significant challenge was the education divide in America. But yeah, I was pretty surprised.
Do we have a minute? What the education divide in terms of?
I see this correlation where in mostly red states, the education level is different from more liberal and progressive states. So I was wondering, would there be a correlation between and making this kind of divide in opinion in our
There's no question that is a massive challenge. What we're facing right now is a federal government that wants to do away with the Department of Education. By the way, we haven't even mentioned climate change.
Yep.
We are absorbed by all these other things happening right now, but that's still happening. And that is why we had the extreme weather events that led to the dryness out in Altadena and Palisades and the 100-mile-an-hour winds. And, that's still not not going waste. We've got a lot of challenges, but at our core, we have to figure out how can we organize ourselves as a society so that we can tackle these things in a way that brings out the best of us. That's why I go to this whole issue of social media, which is really just an issue of how we as a society are able to organize ourselves and make decisions. You know, I'm Greek American and studied a lot of ancient Greek philosophy and history. And Plato, you may have heard, the great philosopher, was very skeptical about democracy. He said, democracy is always one, and this is 2,500 years ago. Democracy is always one step away from tyranny, and the middle step is chaos. The democracy will be thrown a problem that it cannot solve, and some charismatic leader will come along and say, give me the power, I alone can fix it. That, to me, is the space where we're in right now. And so the best way to fight it is to show the ability of our democracies to be able to work together collaboratively and effectively and hopefully pleasantly and show that we can actually solve these problems. And if everybody is getting different information or being manipulated by the information in their feed, we can't even get to the first step to be able to address the challenges like the one that you mentioned.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that. I apologize, I know we're at time. But that's why I said the age of misinformation, because I'll never forget, I was on the elliptical. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning. If you ever want entertainment, watch Fox News in the middle of the night. They make the most basic thing that sounds like a great idea. That would be a great idea to anyone else. It's like it's an awful idea. And that's exactly what was happening. They had the Democrats' platform, and one of them was universal pre-K, making sure that kids can go to school early on for free. I don't know about y'all, but that sounds like a pretty good idea to me. But they were bashing it as if it was the craziest, like we were trying to charge them $10,000 a student. And I'm like, wait a minute, wait, what? But you're gonna have someone sitting at home who's gonna buckle up in their corner saying, yeah, that's an awful idea. How dare they make sure my grandson or my granddaughter goes to school for free? The craziest thing. So when you see these kind of things happening.
Somehow that's become communism.
Right, exactly. Left-wing woke propaganda.
That one of the greatest elements of what has created the United States of America, bringing education. Yeah. So, but again, that's what gives me hope, is that you guys are here. You know how these tools work. Help each other, help us figure this out. There is a solution. I really believe it. And I believe that we have the capability to address it. Certainly here in California, where we still have state laws that can address these kinds of things. You know, I saw President Obama about 2 weeks after Trump won the first time, and he asked me how I was doing. Madam Ambassador, how are you doing? And I said, Mr. President, I'm not doing very well. I am very, very concerned. And he said to me, I know what you're saying, but never forget, the sun is going to keep coming up every day. That I have held such a simple thing to say. Tomorrows keep coming. We are enfranchised in the system. You are enfranchised to do things. And if I may make a plug for our great state of California, we have a lot of like-minded people who are not going away and who are going to work on these challenges and meet this moment together.
Thank you so much. I think that was a great way to wrap up the program, and I want to thank both of you for your time, for your thoughtful and your thought-provoking answers all the questions. And thank you all for your participation. I just want to say a few last words before you wrap up. So for those of you who are watching online, please check out Creating Citizens webpage for more information about Student Educator Civics education projects. And we're going to turn it over to Griffith for more directions on what we'll be doing next. But before we sign off, let's give another round of applause to our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Okay.